2023 BRICS. Here it is. These nations are coming together to create an alliance against the United States and the West. Let's get into it. BRICS, the economic group of America's rivals and friends alike. Let me go ahead and explain this. You've got Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It looks as if they could change the global economy. How could this work? When leaders of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa meet this week, many observers may ask, could this group of countries challenge the U.S. and the West? Before the summit, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa described a common desire to have a more balanced global order. Well, that makes sense because, people should have that type of balance. He was largely focused on economics. Leaders of the BRICS countries meet annually and a decade ago established their own developmental bank. But due to their own differences and in the face of a largely US-run global financial system, their efforts have been symbolic, but yet it's been much more than symbolic. This is happening. This is really happening. The fall of Babylon. We are witnessing it. The group is very potent. As many as 40 countries want to join the BRICS according to South Africa's 2023 summit chair. So there are more countries that want to join this alliance. Tremendous. In addition, Russian President Vladimir Putin won't attend this summit because South Africa is a signatory to the International Criminal Court, where Putin faces charges of alleged war crimes for the Ukraine invasion. So because of that, he won't be attending, but he's got one of his top officials there as well, and he will be appearing via video, which I will show a little bit later on here. Continuing on. In 2001, Goldman Sachs economist Jim O'Neill coined an acronym of Brazil, Russia, India, and China BRICS. The group began to meet annually, and South Africa joined in 2010, officially making the group BRICS, Big S. The BRICS gained new appeal, especially after the 2008-2009 financial crisis that originated in the U.S. housing market and the European context. While the country's share of the global economy has grown over the last decade, now making up more than the G7 group of advanced economies. That is huge, fam. Huge. Experts say that BRICS countries are concerned about their sovereignty and lack of representation in international institutions. They seek alternative centers of finance, harbor resentment for the WTO, IMF, and the World Bank, and seek a world that is not run by the US dollar, which they see as a coercive instrument. The United States dollar was put into place, I believe, after the Second World War, 1945, as the petrodollar. And that is what has given the United States and the US dollar global dominance for about 70 years. Much of the world has become sick of Americanization of the world, and that countries like China needed a bigger role in global governance. As you see here, Xi Jinping arriving with the president of South Africa. It led me to think we need to somehow develop a world in which different philosophies, different cultures, different political beliefs and regimes can somehow coexist. Much of the focus in recent weeks has been around the dozens of countries that want to join the bloc, and I did hear that they will be looking to allow these other countries to join. Sounds fair to me, Verdad. Sounds very fair to me. That's exactly what should be happening in the world, because what's happened is that the United States and the other Western countries have pretty much ganged up on the poor countries, and through colonialism as well as slavery have kept them poor and underdeveloped. Now they're harnessing their power because they see how powerful they are as a group, as well as that they have a ton of the population in the world, as well as GDP, which I'll touch on coming up here in a moment. Much of the focus in recent weeks has been around the dozens of countries that want to join the bloc, and like I said, they are looking to add countries. Another item that many observers are closely following is the prospect of a shared currency for the BRICS. This is a part of the crux of this video, which is the destruction of the United States dollar, which has allowed the United States to maintain its dominance over the rest of the world. The US dollar is what has allowed the United States, as well as the other European countries, along with the euro, to maintain their dominance over all of the rest of the countries in the world. So these BRICS countries are looking to put together a currency of their own and not use the United States dollar for trading in terms of oil, gas, food, what have you. That would be a major game changer. It's telling that so many journalists and analysts have discussed it in the lead up to the summit. It shows extreme wariness some countries have of the US dollar at a time when US-led sanctions have had punishing effects and surprising knock-on effects. So yeah, they've been talking about this around the world, as well as the dominance of the US dollar, and they're looking to put an end to this. This could be the nail in the coffin. I will be bringing out some Bible verses here very shortly to show you about Babylon. More practical then is the new development bank, the BRICS answer to the World Bank. As you know, that there is the IMF, International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. These banks basically have been keeping the poor countries poor. What happens is once these countries come into financial difficulty, the IMF, International Monetary Fund, or World Bank come in and say, hey, we'll give you billions of dollars of loans to keep your economy afloat. So once these countries accept this, which is basically a yoke around the neck, they now have to do what these countries say. So you didn't get paid? Doesn't matter. Pay me. You don't like what happened? Pay me. No matter what. Your economy's going in the gutter, huh? Pay me. Your citizens are revolting? No problem. Pay me. You see, little Goodfellas there. So what happens is the IMF comes in, gives them these loans, and then the countries have to put these austerity packages together, which basically is a fancy way of saying that they're cutting all the services. They're going to cut the social services. They'll cut food assistance. They'll cut living subsidies. They'll cut education subsidies. So all of the things that the poorer people need within those countries, they cut those subsidies, and they couldn't live without it as it was. And also, because of the effects of those loans, it causes inflation to go through the roof. And many of these people in some of these poorer countries weren't able to make it as it was, even with the assistance. And that's why you see protests. That's why you see the protests going on in all kinds of countries throughout the world. Believe you me, the IMF's fingerprints are all over those countries, and they're a part of the reason why the people cannot survive. More practical is the new development bank. Relatively small, it has $50 billion of subscribed capital. It is about half of what the World Bank commits to annually. Still, Saudi Arabia wants to join, and they're the oil emperors of the world. Egypt, Bangladesh, and the United Arab Emirates are members of the new development bank. So you've got Ishmael up in there trying to make that happen. There's consensus on the fact that the global order needs to change. Absolutely. Needs to be more balanced, whether it is through the reform of the current institutions or through the creations of new ones. Absolutely. Speaking at the United Nations last year, President Biden called for the reform of the UN Security Council. The time has come for this institution to become more inclusive, he said. Biden can see the writing on the wall. I believe Biden can see the writing on the wall, and I believe because he can see the writing on the wall, he's trying to get out in front of him, okay? The U.S. is doubling down on its close Asia partners to counter China. Just days before the BRICS Summit, President Joe Biden hosted the leaders of Japan and South Korea for an extraordinary meeting at Camp David, and now China is meeting with its informal partners as dozens of countries clamor to join the BRICS. That helps explain why the Biden administration has sought to draw India closer, feting Modi with a state dinner this summer. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, he's a beauty, said in June that the U.S. is deeply engaged with its leading members, emphasizing Biden's contact with Lula and Modi because they're a part of the BRICS nations. Surprise, 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 surprise. The interest of dozens of global South countries in joining BRICS is a major global indicator of where things go from here. Absolutely, we're looking at the real-time implosion of Babylon. Revelations 14, 7 and 8. Check this out.
Saying with a loud voice, "Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come. And worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea and springs of water." And another angel followed, saying, "Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she has made all nations drink."
This is a chart which outlines the BRICS New Development Bank and pooled currency resources. The New Development Bank was formerly known as the BRICS Development Bank and will help countries to fund development at favorable interest rates. What a nice surprise. They're not going to try to murder them on the interest rates. Member countries will make an initial contribution of $10 billion each, $2 billion of which will be paid in installments over 7 years. The remaining $8 billion will be callable capital that is used only when needed by the bank. This is cooperation, people. So you see here, you got Brazil, $10 billion capital for the bank and $18 billion guaranteed for CRA. CRA is the Contingent Reserve Arrangement. CRA will be a fund with pooled reserves of $100 billion to help countries to cope with short-term currency problems. So now moving on, Russia, $10 billion for the capital bank and $18 billion guaranteed for the Contingent Reserve Arrangement. India, $10 billion and $18 billion for the CRA. China, $10 billion and $41 guaranteed for the CRA, because they want to entrench themselves as a leader of this movement, because in the world it's US versus China. South Africa, $10 billion and $5 billion for the CRA. BRICS New Development Bank and Pooled Currency Resources, initial contributions in billions of dollars. So you see a little bubble chart here with the $50 billion in the New Development Bank and $100 billion in the Contingent Reserve Arrangement. They don't call it snitching, they call it cooperation. Next, let's look at the power of the BRICS in numbers. Again, the countries being Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Of the world's population, these 5 countries have 42% of the world's population, as you see up here in this representative map. GDP, global GDP, 23% of the world's global GDP, which is gross domestic product. Forward here, BRICS countries account for 17% of the world trade, and I believe with the coordination together that will increase. Also, they account for 26.6% of world land area. That's a lot. And lastly here, 13.2% of world voting power. Excellent chart there. Take a look at this chart here. This is really representative. Excellent chart. Changes in the world GDP when adjusted by cost of living. This was from a 2018 chart, but it's good for use for scale here. So you get a chance to see Japan, 25 trillion, United States with 20 trillion in terms of the GDP. Then it's broken up here by different countries and regions. Just another representative chart for you there. Let's take a look here, looking towards the future. BRICS have a larger US dollar GDP than the G6 have altogether in less than 40 years. Okay, so take a look at this chart. You can see the progressive growth here since 2000. This is in US billions. So it's grown. 2025, BRICS economy is over half as large as the G6. So by 2025, they'll be half as large. But by 2040, BRICS will overtake the G6 nations in terms of gross domestic product. And the United States and the West know this. They're trying to get out in front of it. They're trying to get these other alliances together with Japan, South Korea, and the other countries that they can work with to, bolster themselves and maintain that dominance. It's all about dominance. Let's listen to Vladimir Putin's remarks here.
We share these assessments. Our group of 5 countries has rightly proved to be a credible entity on the global arena, with ever-growing influence in global affairs. The strategic course of BRICS is aimed at the future, and it meets the aspirations of the main part of the international community, the so-called global majority. By acting in concert on the principles of equality, partnership, support, and account for each other's interests, we deal with the most pressing issues of global and regional agenda. The main important thing is that BRICS stands for a multiple world order that is equitable and built on international law and the principles of the United Nations Charter, including respect for the right of every people to its own development path.
As you see here, Putin is really hitting hard here. He's really focused on the development, on the coordination of the global majority, as he put it. That's kind of a dig at the West there, the global majority, because the population of this BRICS group and the other nations that want to come in, it's extraordinary. Let's continue and see if he has any words about colonialism.
Some countries promote their hegemony, exceptionality, and their policy of the ongoing colonialism and neocolonialism. I would like to note that the aspiration to preserve their hegemony in the world led to a dire crisis in Ukraine.
And as you see here, Putin takes direct shots, shots fired. We got shots fired. He's talked directly about their colonialism because if you remember, Russia didn't enslave these other countries. Russia didn't do that. That was the United States. That was the Western, the European countries. It wasn't Putin. Matter of fact, Vladimir Putin and Russia just forgave $23 billion of debt from the African countries, and he treats them as people. He treats them as equals, while the other countries only look to take the resources from these other countries from Africa. They only look to take these resources and treat them below the standard of human dignity. So they're trying to siphon them, and the effects of colonialism have been horrific. The colonialism never ended. It just continued, but just in a different fashion. The yoke of iron nowadays is not the one of metal that they had around the necks of Israel when they enslaved us due to us breaking Yah's law. But now that yoke is an economic yoke. It's a colonialism yoke. It's a yoke of control. It's a yoke of not allowing you to develop, keeping you in the so-called dark ages. So that's what you've got going on there. Let's see if we can move forward. Putin back.
And which is building on international law. The BRICS countries are building up their potential. As was said, the BRICS countries are home to over 3 billion persons, and their share in global GDP as per purchasing power parity of the so-called G7. Over the past decades, BRICS investment to global economy have doubled, and the cumulative export reached 20% of the overall indicator. We are successfully implementing the strategy for BRICS Economic Partnership 2025. Namely, we are strengthening the bilateral cooperation on such areas as diversification of supply chains, de-dollarization and transfer to local currencies in our mutual settlements, digital economy, support for small and medium enterprises, just transfer of technologies. And naturally, the active part in these processes is played by business community.
There you go. So he's talking about the de-dollarization, and that is really the goal of this group. They look to de-dollarize. They look to dethrone the U.S. dollar as the leading currency in the world. This would dethrone Babylon, and Babylon would fall. Babylon is in the process of falling, and I'm red wine toasting to Edom's real-time implosion. So that's happening now. We're seeing it. We're living it. These are the last days. This is happening in real time. Be ready. We got to be ready at all times. It's happening. Let's take in some final comments from Putin.
Economic Partnership 2025 and the development of new long-term guidelines for cooperation. This includes, in our view, increasing the role of states in international monetary and financial system, the development of interbank cooperation, expanding the use of local currencies and deepening interaction between tax, customs and anti-monopoly agencies. Naturally, Russian priorities include bolstered partnership in science and innovation, healthcare, education, the development of humanitarian ties in general. Cultural and civilizational diversity is one of the pillars of the new multiple world order, and it means the establishment of integral free space for cultural exchange, art and creativity. As we see it, it's high time for partners within BRICS, as well as the SCO and the Community of Independent States and other countries, to have a serious conversation on the future of culture in the world, on preserving and multiplying global cultural heritage.
Fair use. So as you see here, Putin lets it go again, shots fired. He's talking about the banking. He's talking about diversity. What he's simply doing, what these nations are doing, is treating people like people. Is treating people like they're equal, like they all matter. Okay, that's what's going on here. He spoke about diversity. Diversity is so important. He spoke about a multiple world order. He didn't want to say a new world order, but a multiple world order. And that was his way of saying the new world order, but with a way of inclusion of these other countries that have been left out since the beginning of time. That's what we have going on here. Let me add a little bit more commentary to Putin here. At a much-watched BRICS Summit, Putin tries to rally support. The Five Nations BRICS Summit is focused on whether to expand the club and how to be a counterweight to the Western powers. They're setting up for war here. War isn't just with guns and bullets. It's also through brains and economics and relationships. In a speech to fellow leaders of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South African group, Mr. Putin blamed the West for Russia's exit from an agreement on Ukraine grain exports that had helped stabilize global food supplies and prices, a matter of serious concern to many developing countries, including those in the bloc. But Mr. Putin alone among the five heads of government was not in South Africa and delivered his remarks and delivered his recorded message over a giant video screen in the convention center because he is wanted for war crimes under a warrant issued by the International Criminal Court. South Africa, which is a party to the treaty that created the court and would have been obliged to arrest him if he had traveled there, had asked him to stay away. So South Africa asked him not to come, even though that they were just there in Russia. He was just courting a bunch of African countries, had them there in Russia. He told him not to come because that way South Africa would not be breaking their responsibilities of arresting them with the partnerships that they have in other alliances. So no matter, he just presents it through video. We live in a global world. BRICS members have seen it as the kernel of a diplomatic and economic bloc to counterbalance Western-dominated alliances like the Group of Seven. Dozens of other countries have applied for entry, and Saudi Arabia, that oil giant, Indonesia, Egypt, and Argentina are among those considered to be at the top of the list. BRICS created the New Development Bank, as we spoke about. It's based in Shanghai. It's an alternative to the institutions like the World Bank to provide financing to developing countries. Now, if you were a developing country and you've seen what the IMF has done to these other countries with these austerity measures, where would you go? Would you go to the IMF if you were a leader of one of these other countries and you were in financial need? Or would you go to the BRICS, which is inclusive, away from these Western colonial enslaving powers, and use the New Development Bank, which is also going to give you a better interest rate? It also, this makes sense in a number of reasons. One, financially. Two, you're working with people that are treating you as equal, as well as, treating you as people. And three, this is the direction that things are going because the Bible states that the countries will move away from the United States, that Babylon will be destroyed, and you're looking at one of the nails in the coffins here. And it has discussed adopting a new currency to diminish the dollar's role as a default in international trade. Again, this is key. The de-dollarization of the world is absolutely key. That must be a part of it. Also, we're going to have Xi Jinping coming up here. I'm going to have some comments from him coming up soon here. Let me give you a read on this. Mr. Xi spoke of the camaraderie relationship between the two countries, speaking of China and the United States. That's just another word for that their relationship is very tenuous, that's very problematic, that's very adversarial. China and the United States often accuse each other of bullying smaller countries to their own benefit, and Mr. Xi praised South Africa for forging ahead with an independent development plan, which he said suits its national ambitions. China, like Russia, has worked to cultivate ties to African nations and other countries outside the major U.S. and Europe-dominated economy and security structures, including NATO and the Group of Seven and the European Union. Mr. Xi wants to expand the BRICS groups. We're looking at I think they said 40 countries want to get into this, aside from these ones that are already here. Incredible. Mr. Modi, who is the president of India, says here, there is absolutely no doubt that in the coming years, India will become the growth engine of the world. Wow, that's a statement. That is a statement. President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva of Brazil also had some remarks that he gave at the summit. At the summit, he called for strengthening the New Development Bank, which is headed by his protege, Dilma Rousseff, a former Brazilian president who joined him on stage. Africa, like Brazil, bears an unfair burden from climate change, Mr. Lula said, and they can work together to combat its effects, but not on terms dictated dictated by major powers or existing international institutions. We've got clear decoupling here. We've got the United States and the West has a fight on their hands. These people are rising up. They understand their power. They're taking it and they're utilizing it. President Silva continued, "We cannot accept the greedy neocolonialism that imposes trade barriers and discriminatory measures under the guise of protecting the environment." Talk to him, Mr. Lula. As well, if you remember Brazil, here's a quick trivia question for you. Which country in the world has the most people of so-called African descent aside from Africa? Ding, 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 ding. The answer is Brazil, with over 200 million. Most of you might have thought the United States, but there's only about 40 million of the Southern Kingdom in the United States. But Brazil has over 200 million, and they also have a lot of our Northern Kingdom brothers and sisters from the 10 tribes. Los Latinos, they're there as well. All praises to the Most High Yah. Continuing on a day focused on boosting trade, President Lula continued, between the member countries, a parade of business leaders took turns on stage to talk about how to turn this club of nations into a powerhouse economic bloc. So they're in it to win it. Diplomats and business forums hosted events on the sideline, hoping to make the most of the surprising global attention the summit has attracted. For the smallest of the BRICS countries, South Africa, whose economic and political woes have created a despondent national atmosphere, politicians see pulling off an international event of this scale is a rare win. Absolutely. This coordination and working together for all to receive a piece of the pie is excellent. Facing waning domestic popularity, Mr. Ramaphosa, the South African president, is casting himself as an international statesman and his country as the voice of Africa. Smart move. Positioning is everything sometimes. He's doing well with his positioning. He has invited more than 30 African heads of state to attend the summit, and some, like Egypt, are lobbying to join the club. Let's hear some comments from Xi Jinping here. I'll be back with commentary in a moment. Fair use.
Time when the world is undergoing major shifts, division, and regrouping. It has entered a new period of turbulence and transformation. We, the BRICS countries, should always bear in mind our founding purpose of strengthening ourselves through unity, act on a strong sense of responsibility, enhance cooperation across the board, and promote high-quality development, so as to bring to the world more certainty, stability, and positive energy. We should deepen business and financial cooperation to boost economic growth. Development is an inalienable right of all countries. It is not a privilege reserved for a few. The world economic recovery remains shaky, with less than 3% of growth for the year.
Xi Jinping taking shots, taking scores, taking down scores. He talked about his founding purpose here: cooperation, letting these countries have a voice, letting them have their dignity and their opportunity, aside from the great Western powers who are looking to dominate them. All praises.
BRICS countries should be fellow companions on the journey of development and revitalization, and oppose decoupling and supply chains disruption, as well as economic coercion. We should focus on practical cooperation, particularly in such fields as digital economy, green development, and supply chain, and bolster economic, trade, and financial exchanges.
Excellent there. So as you see, he's opposed to decoupling, so that way these countries can work together, be closer together, because right now the world is decoupling or deglobalizing, at least the West is, with Russia and Ukraine, and the gas and the natural resources that stop flowing from Russia to Europe and to the rest of the world, and also the fact that the United States blew up one of those Stream 2s, they blew it up. So That way the United States could be the beneficiary. The countries have been decoupling, the West has been decoupling, while these other countries here in the BRICS are going to be working more closely together in terms of cooperation as well as with their supply chains. Let's continue. Fair use.
China will set up a China BRICS Science and Innovation Incubation Park for the new era to support the deployment of innovation results. Under the BRICS Remote Sensing Satellite Constellation Mechanism, we will explore the establishment of a BRICS Global Remote Sensing Satellite.
Wow. So he's trying to be innovative here and keep everybody in the loop. He's trying to share information and let innovation kind of ring for everybody there that's involved.
We should expand political and security cooperation to uphold peace and tranquility. The Cold War mentality is still haunting our world, and the geopolitical situation is getting tense. BRICS countries should keep to the direction of peaceful development.
As you see here, Xi Jinping is speaking about peace, upholding peace, and getting away from the Cold War mentality and the Cold War tensions that exist. These are clear shots at the United States and the West. Fair use.
Artificial intelligence is a new frontier of development. It may generate enormous development dividends, but also harbors risks and challenges. Our 5 countries have agreed to launch the AI study group of BRICS Institute of Future Networks at an early date. We need to enable the study group to play its full role, further expand cooperation on AI, and step up information exchange and technological cooperation. We need to jointly fend off risks and develop AI governance frameworks and standards with broad-based consensus. So as to make AI technologies more secure, reliable, controllable, and equitable.
Here, Xi Jinping is going for the AI. That's the game. That's the game changer, the game over. Artificial intelligence. So here, he wants to harness the power of artificial intelligence, allow all the countries to take advantage of it, share the information and the technology for these countries and for their development, which obviously the United States and the other Western countries were not going to do. The artificial intelligence, by the way, this is another arms race that you're dealing with. You're just dealing with it in a different arena. Artificial intelligence is the end game, in my opinion. So that will be shared with these other countries. Let's continue.
Development opportunities and tackle global challenges. International rules must be written and upheld jointly by all countries, based on the purposes and principles of the UN Charter, rather than dictated by those with the strongest muscles or the loudest voice. Ganging up to form exclusive groups and packaging their own rules as international norms are even more unacceptable. BRICS countries should practice true multilateralism, stick to solidarity, and oppose division.
Here, he just took more direct shots. Talking about ganging up, the U.S. is a big gang. The U.S., these Western countries. So he's talking about them ganging up, basically setting the rules and making everybody else play by their rules. The BRICS is not going to allow that. They are setting their own rules. They're playing by their own rules as the same way as the U.S. is. They're no longer going to deal with this hypocrisy and this so-called bullying. Fair use.
And reject the attempt to create small circles or exclusive blocs. We need to fully leverage the role of the new development bank, push forward reform of the international financial and monetary systems, and increase the representation and voice of developing countries.
Here, again, Xi Jinping is reaching his hand out. He wants these smaller countries, these underdeveloped countries, to have a voice, for their development to increase. It's really just a shame when you look around, because I've traveled the world, it's really a shame when you go to some of these countries and the level of poverty and underdevelopment that you see. When you see these rich countries and how they're living versus the poor countries that I've been in, I've been all through Latin America. It's just amazing. It's really, really sad when you look at that and you see it firsthand and you see the inequality that exists. Also, you see that inequality, for instance, in the United States, the way they sectioned off the so-called ghettos from the rest of other rich areas. For instance, I'm from Long Beach in the United States, in California, Los Angeles. You could travel. I worked in Beverly Hills. I was a senior VP. When I would travel to Beverly Hills to work, in a couple of blocks, you see it change from the hood to paradise. Just amazing how they keep you in poverty, and then also they section off the tax dollars, so only the tax dollars from those poor areas go for that poor area's development, schooling, and whatnot, while the rich areas with all that rich tax dollars coming in get all of the perks and benefits. So that's just another thing I wanted to point out. Let's take a look at Revelation 17, verses 1 through 6.
Revelation 17. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-coloured beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet colour, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration.
And for those of you that have been under a rock, the United States and the West is Mystery Babylon. It's Babylon in the Bible, so I'll give you that nugget there. And this is just talking about Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And it's time to pay up. We're here. We're at the end. We're at the end here. Now let's take a look at Revelations chapter 18. We'll start with verses 1 through 11 here. Bear with me. It's very important.
Revelation 18. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works, in the cup which she hath filled to her double. How much she hath glorified herself, and lived deliciously. So much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death, and mourning, and famine. And she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her, and lament for her, when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more.
So yeah, that's very important, obviously. You're seeing it, you're getting it, it's happening. I'm red wine toasting to Edom's real-time implosion. All of these things are coming. We are witnessing the great fall of Babylon.
And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. The merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls! For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. And every shipmaster, and all the company in ships and sailors, and as many as trade by sea, stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads, and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour is she made desolate. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. And when he had opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th beast say, Come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and his name that sat on him was Death. And hell followed with him. And power was given unto them over the 4th part of the earth, to kill with sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beast of the earth. And when he had opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God, and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And white robes were given unto every one of them, and it was said unto them, that they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also and their brethren, that should be killed as they were, should be fulfilled.
Yes, yes, yes. That verse there, Revelations chapter 6, 7 through 11, is talking about the saints. The saints are actually under the altar in heaven, and they're pleading with Yah, with Christ for vengeance, and they shall have it. This is Revelations chapter 18, verse 24.
And in her was found the blood of prophets, and of saints, and of all that were slain upon the earth.
Another mention there of Babylon, just for you guys, because the saints are the Israelites, and we are the Israelites. Okay? This is Crown Prince Media. I am the Crown Prince. Please leave a comment, subscribe for more biblical heat. All praises to the Most High Yah. Let's go.